Sports Note for Thursday, August 1st, and we're going to talk a little MMA today, but we're going to actually go a little bit off the board here for a little bit. We're not going to talk UFC. We're actually going to talk for the first time ever on the Sports Note, and today is the 8-year anniversary of the Sports Note. The key number is 8, so it's the 8-year anniversary of the Sports Note, but it also is 8 years as a professional fighter for PFL Flyweight number 1 overall ranked fighter Dakota Ditcheva. Now, Ditcheva, fighting professionally since the age of 18, just turned 26 about 3 weeks ago, and is in the PFL semifinals, which will take place in Nashville tomorrow night. Ditcheva has a unblemished MMA record of 12-0. Her last 4 fights have all come by the way of knockout, the last 3 by TKO. She's got 1 submission and 1 decision in her MMA career, and prior to that had a 10-win, 1-loss record in Muay Thai, professional Muay Thai, and that only loss was in her final fight, which was back in March of 2017, where that fight went the distance. And there were several KOs, a couple of decisions, a doctor stoppage in there. But Ditcheva is poised to break out in a way in women's mixed martial arts that we haven't seen in quite some time. When women's mixed martial arts started to kind of come to the forefront, it was Miesha Tate, it was Gina Carano, then it transitioned to Ronda Rousey, then it became Chris Cyborg, then it became Amanda Nunes, and right now, and then there was also Valentina Shevchenko for a while, there was Rose Namajunas, there was Joanna Jędrzejczyk, but Dakota Ditcheva is poised to really put her name amongst those elite, even fighting in the Professional Fighters League, which is still an up-and-coming type promotion. But here's the thing. The PFL evolved out of the World Series of Fighting back in 2017. The WSOF was founded in 2012, then purchased by by a group of investors, and then molded into the PFL in 2017, and then the PFL back in November of last year purchased Bellator, who's been around for quite some time as well, and now you're going to get a lot of cross promotion and super fights, and we'll talk about one of those potential super fights here towards the end. But Ditcheva, with her unblemished record, keep in mind this young lady has just turned 26 and is actually in the biggest fight of her life on tomorrow night in Nashville, and then the winner of that fight is going to fight either Talia Santos or longtime MMA women's veteran Liz Carmouche in the finals for the 2024 PFL Women's Flyweight Championship. Now, how the PFL works, it's the only mixed martial arts promotion in the world that we're aware of that uses a season type of scoring, and it looks a lot like, soccer or European hockey. There's only 2 fights a fighter will encounter during the regular season, and then depending on how those fights end determines their standing going into the playoffs. So if a fighter wins one of those 2 fights, they are guaranteed 3 points for the win, and then depending on how that fight ends determines any potential bonus points for the standings that will come away with it as well. If a fight goes the distance and goes to the judges' scorecards, there are no bonuses awarded. If a fighter finishes the fight in the first round, they earn 3 bonus points. Second round, 2 points. And naturally, third round finish earns 1 point. There are right now no 5-round fights in the Professional Fighters League. That might be something for when they go over to Bellator or cross-promote. Dakota Ditcheva won both of her fights in the PFL this year with first-round finishes, meaning she scored a maximum of 12 points. 3 points for each of the 2 victories, and then 3 bonus points per fight for the first-round finishes. Of the 6 weight classes that the PFL has, 5 male, 1 female, Ditcheva was the only fighter to earn a perfect 12 points. Two other male fighters earned 11, one earned 10, but Ditcheva was the only one basically to score the maximum number of points. And at 25 years old, she is 5'8", 125 pounds, and has a 70-inch reach advantage. She has a more than 4-inch reach advantage over any of the three remaining competitors in her weight class for these playoffs. Now, the PFL has been around again for a few years, and really they've kind of gotten some big names that may have the potential to be breakouts. Former 20-plus time international gold medalist in judo, Kayla Harrison, transitioned from judo, where she won 2 Olympic gold medals for the United States and also was a former world champion, goes to PFL, wins the 2019 and 2021 PFL middleweight. I'm sorry, not middleweight. She wins the 145-pound crown. And then loses in the finals in a dramatic upset to Larissa Pacheco, again in the 22 finals. And then Pacheco has actually held that title for quite some time, but the PFL did not put on a 2024 season at that weight class for females, instead deciding to go with the flyweight. Now, Pacheco has not fought in some time here, several months, if not potentially the entire year. And the reason for that is that there's talk that Pacheco could be looking for a super fight with Bellator 145-pound women's champion, the legendary Chris Cyborg Santos, and often controversial Cyborg Santos. But there's also, in the last few days, there's been a lot of talk that Santos has gone on her Instagram and her social media pages saying at 39 years old, she understands that her time in the sport is extremely limited. So could there be a possibility that this might be that a Santos versus Pacheco super fight, title versus title essentially at that point, could be Cyborg Santos' final fight, win or lose, depending on the outcome. But this actually means that Dakota Ditcheva is in very, very rarefied air, as not only would she remain undefeated, but she actually would end up having 2 championships under the PFL banner. Now, Ditcheva has been a former champion in Muay Thai, and she was the IMFA world champion in the junior class in 2016 at 57 kilograms. She also was the PFL European, the PFL Europe champion at the weight class last year, and that fight is up on YouTube, and she won that in absolutely dominating fashion, to where her opponent, Italy's Valentina Scatizzi, could not continue after the first round because of how swollen her eye was, and the doctor deemed there was no way she was going to let her out for the first round. So Ditcheva walks away with a championship there, comes over to the United States, and has not gotten past 4 minutes of the first round. She beats Lisa Malden by a TKO with knee and body punches in her first fight. At 354 the first round back in April. Then in June, she defeats Chelsea Hackett with a punch to the body, an absolutely stellar punch to the body at PFL 4 in June in Connecticut. And that sets up her semifinal matchup with Jenna Bishop. Now, Bishop was 1-1 and actually ended up finishing 4th in the standings this year. And Ditcheva at 5'8", with that 70-inch reach advantage, you would figure would be a little bit of a taller, more lanky fighter. Not the case. Ditcheva has extreme reach, but has extreme power, and you would figure with the taller fighters with the longer reach, they would use that for distance, and they also might use that for any potential grappling. And you also figure with with Muay Thai, there's a lot more stand-up involved, but there is some clinch game involved with that as well. Ditcheva really doesn't so much use that. She has the ability to go to that if necessary, but with a lot of the fights that I've watched from her in the last 6 months, she basically uses her length as her strength. She has incredible striking power and the ability to not only keep an opponent at distance, but with her jabs, her front kicks, her push kicks, there's so much torque and leverage behind those that they actually become just as dangerous as a weapon as if she were to get in close with Muay Thai clenches, knees, etc. And this is where, that finish with the body punches and kicks was so impressive for her that she was able to land that heavy of a shot from that level of distance. Ditcheva is extremely well conditioned. As a matter of fact, Ditcheva is one of the main reasons why I've actually started taking Celsius with my workouts lately. And not just because, she endorses them. I'm not sure if she's sponsored by them. They need to be. Ironically enough, when she stepped on the scale for the weigh-ins earlier today, she ended up weighing in with a can of Celsius in her hand, like actually even a half full can is going to actually cause her to make or miss weight at this particular point. But you would think that, getting back to Harrison for a moment, Harrison loses the fight to Pacheco and then signs a contract with the UFC. Her first fight earlier this year, back in April, she chokes out former UFC champion Holly Holm and is now waiting on her next fight. Pacheco, again, is still waiting on what's going to happen with any potential Cyborg super fight. Does the PFL go to a 145-pound weight class for Pacheco to possibly defend in 2025? But I would like to potentially see Ditcheva stay in the PFL and then also open up the possibility of the Bellator crossover. I'm not saying she would be a fish out of water in the UFC, but I would like to actually see the PFL succeed because it's a very interesting, it's a very novel, and it's a very cool concept with this league standing type format. Where if she were to go over to UFC, yes, she would have incredible competition in her weight class. She would have Rose Namajunas. She would have Valentina Shevchenko in that weight class, among others. But it would be very cool to see really how far Ditcheva can advance, in the PFL as still a relative newcomer. And it's very, very strange saying that as a newcomer, as she's been fighting in MMA really only since April of 2021. She's trained with Manchester Top Team for many of her fights, out of her native Newcastle, England, and has also now, since she's kind of come stateside with her most recent fights, trains with American Top Team, which we all know is one of the premier fight teams in all of mixed martial arts. But I would like to see if Ditcheva can get past Jenna Bishop, what she could potentially do against, her and Liz Carmouche would be a very, very interesting fight, considering how much I've actually followed Liz Carmouche's career and how close Liz Carmouche has kind of come towards, winning championships in the past over in UFC. The title fights that she's had, the qualifiers, the number one contender type spots, or eliminators as some call them. But Ditcheva and Carmouche would be a very interesting fight because then you would actually see Carmouche maybe only having a few fights left in her at 40 years old, but still always being a dangerous type fighter, coming in with, I want to say that she is the number 3, but at that particular point, 2 versus 3, it's kind of a wash at that point with the way that they qualified with the PFL, against Ditcheva, who has all the potential of being the next top female star in women's mixed martial arts. So let me know what you guys think. Are you guys going to watch PFL, the semifinals tomorrow night? Do you hope that possibly you get that Pacheco Cyborg crossover? Where do you think Ditcheva goes from here, win or lose? Do you actually like her chances to kind of run the table here and take the championship? But there's no wise guys this week. We will be back with you guys next week. Mike is actually going to be in town here in Cleveland here very, very shortly. You might actually see the two of us on social media together sometime this weekend. But I will see you guys very, very soon in the next one. Take care.